Everyone's teaching you to think bigger. Bigger position sizes, bigger targets, bigger risk. But here's what the math actually shows. The traders who grow accounts fastest aren't the ones swinging for home runs. They're the ones who've mastered something most people find boring. They've figured out how to fall in love with the small win, not tolerate it, not settle for it, actually love it. Because compound growth isn't about how much you make per trade. It's about how many times you can repeat an edge without your ego destroying it. The secret to massive account growth? Now I know what you're thinking. Mark, that sounds nice, but I don't have time to grow slowly. I need results. I need my account to grow now, and I hear you. I really do. But that urgency, that feeling that you're behind, that you need to catch up, that's exactly what's been keeping you stuck. Because here's what nobody tells you about account growth. It's not a math problem. It's a psychology problem. You can have the perfect position sizing formula, the perfect compounding strategy, the perfect risk management plan, and you'll still blow up your account if you don't understand what I'm about to share with you. See, you've been told that account growth is about tactics, about how much to risk per trade, when to scale up, what percentage to compound. And while those things matter, they're not what determines whether you make it or not. What determines it is whether you can stay small long enough for exponential math to work, whether you can tolerate the invisible phase when nothing looks like it's happening, whether you can resist your ego's demand for immediate validation. And most traders simply can't. They're trying to force growth from a mindset of scarcity, impatience, and ego. You take profits too early because you're afraid they'll disappear. You overtrade because you feel like you're not making progress fast enough. You scale up too quickly because your ego demands that your position sizes match your ambitions. And all of this, every single bit of it, kills the one thing that actually creates account growth: consistency over time. That's it. That's the secret. Consistency over time. But to achieve that, you need to understand something that most people never learn. You need to understand why small trades compound into massive growth only when your psychology doesn't sabotage them. So what you're about to receive in this video isn't more tactics. God knows you don't need another position sizing calculator. What you need is clarity. You need to see why the fastest path to a big account is counterintuitively slow. You need to learn the internal shifts that allow you to stay small long enough for exponential math to work its magic. This isn't about adding more. It's about removing the interference, the psychological static that makes you abandon your edge right before it pays off. And here's the myth we're busting today, that account growth is about doing more trades, more risk, more aggression. The truth? It's about staying more. Staying consistent, staying patient, staying aligned with reality instead of your fantasy timeline. And that's a psychological game, not a mathematical one. So let me take you through this step by step. And I promise you, if you can hear what I'm saying, really hear it, your relationship with account growth will never be the same. Let me tell you about two traders. We'll call them Trader A and Trader B. Both of them start with $5,000. Both of them have the same strategy, the same win rate, the same average win and average loss. On paper, they're identical. But 2 years later, Trader A has grown his account to $100,000. And Trader B has blown up 3 times and is back at $5,000, still searching for the secret, still convinced he just needs a better strategy. So what's the difference? It's not intelligence. It's not strategy. It's not discipline in the way most people think about discipline. It's this. Trader A made a promise to himself in month 1. He said, "I will not change my position size until I've executed this strategy flawlessly for 6 months straight." He stayed small. It felt ridiculous. His friends were making more in a week than he was making in a month. His ego screamed at him every single day. "You're being too conservative. You're leaving money on the table. You're wasting time." But he kept his promise. Month 7, he scaled up 20%. Then he waited. He executed for another 6 months at that new size. Month 13, another 20% increase. Slowly, patiently, boringly. His equity curve looked like nothing special for the first year, just a slow, steady climb. But then something happened. Year 2, exponential math kicked in. That slow, steady climb started to accelerate. Not because he changed anything, not because he found a better strategy or took bigger risks, but because compound growth doesn't show up in a straight line. It shows up in a curve, and you can't see the curve when you're in the early part of it. Now, Trader B, he couldn't wait. He didn't have that patience. Every time he had a good week, he doubled his position size. He thought, I'm on a roll, I need to capitalize on this. Every time he had a bad week, he added more trades to make it back. He thought, I can't end the week red, I need to recover. He was chasing growth instead of creating the conditions for growth. He was treating trading like a sprint when it's actually a marathon. And here's what happens when you sprint a marathon. You burn out, you blow up, you keep restarting from zero. That's the difference. One understood that account growth is a side effect of psychological stability. The other thought account growth was the goal itself. One survived long enough for compounding to work. The other kept interrupting the process, kept killing the seed before it could grow into a tree. And that's what I want you to see. Account growth isn't about the trades you take. It's about the psychological environment you create that allows the trades to compound. Let me give you another way to think about this. Imagine you plant an oak tree seed. You put it in the ground, you water it, you give it sunlight, and then you wait. For the first year, you see almost nothing above ground, maybe a tiny sprout if you're impatient. If you dig it up to check the progress, you'd be disappointed. You'd think, this isn't working, this is taking too long, maybe I planted the wrong seed. But here's what you don't see. Underground, that tree is building a massive root system. It's preparing for decades of growth. That invisible first year is the most important year of the tree's life. Without those roots, the tree will never grow tall. Without that foundation, everything collapses. Now imagine someone who plants a seed, waits 2 weeks, sees nothing, digs it up, and plants a different seed. Then 2 weeks later, they repeat the cycle. They're never getting a tree. They're killing seeds. And most traders are killing seeds. They start with a strategy, it works for a few trades, then they have a losing week and they switch. Or they make a little money and they think, this is too slow, I need something faster. They never stay with anything long enough for the roots to form. They never give the invisible phase a chance to do its work. Account growth requires you to go underground first, to build foundation in the dark, to trust the process during the invisible phase when nothing looks like it's happening. And most people simply can't do it. They need to see progress now. They need validation now. They need their ego fed now. And so they never grow the tree. They spend their entire trading career killing seeds and wondering why nothing grows. So if account growth isn't about doing more, what is it about? What are the actual principles that separate the traders who compound small accounts into big ones from the ones who stay stuck in the cycle? Let me break this down for you, because once you see these principles, you can't unsee them, and your relationship with growth changes forever. The first principle is this: you need to shift from an accumulation mindset to a compounding mindset. Now, most traders have an accumulation mindset. They're trying to stack money, add profits, accumulate wealth. They're measuring progress by how much they made this week, this month. But account growth doesn't work through accumulation. It works through compounding, and compounding requires a completely different psychology. Accumulation says, how much can I make this week? Compounding says, how consistently can I execute? Accumulation focuses on the destination. Compounding focuses on the system. And here's why this matters. When you're in accumulation mode, you take stupid risks because you're measuring progress by dollars made. If you made $1,000 this week, that's good. If you made 200, that's bad. So you push, you force trades, you overtrade, you risk too much because you're trying to hit a number. But when you're in compounding mode, you protect your edge because you're measuring progress by consistency maintained. Did I follow my plan? Did I execute without self-sabotage? Did I trade my edge and nothing else? That's the measure. And if you did that, you won. Even if the dollar amount was small, even if your account only grew 1%, because you maintained the system. You proved you can be trusted. And that consistency, repeated over time, is what creates exponential growth. One mindset sees money as the goal. The other sees consistency as the goal and money as the inevitable byproduct. This isn't semantic. This isn't just a nice way to think about things. This shift in perspective changes everything. Your position sizing, your patience, your ability to weather drawdowns without panicking, everything flows from which mindset you're operating from. Now here's the second principle, and this one's going to sting a little. Every time you scale up your position size before you're psychologically ready, you pay what I call an ego tax. Your ego wants to trade bigger because it wants to feel important, successful, ahead of schedule. Your ego looks at your account balance and says, "You have $10,000 now. You should be risking more. You're ready." But your edge doesn't care about your ego. Your edge performs at a certain position size where you're emotionally neutral, where the dollar amount doesn't trigger fear or greed, where you can execute your plan without interference. The moment you go beyond that size, even if your account can technically handle it, even if the math says it's safe, you start making different decisions. You exit winners early because the dollar amount scares you. A $200 winner feels fine, but a $1,000 winner makes your heart race, and you take it off before your plan says to. You hold losers longer because admitting a $500 loss feels too painful, so you give it more room, more time, hoping it comes back. You skip good setups because the risk feels too real. You see your setup, you know you should take it, but you hesitate because you're thinking about how much you could lose instead of executing your edge. The ego tax is invisible but expensive. It shows up as inconsistency, as trades that should work but don't, as a strategy that worked perfectly when you were risking $50 per trade but falls apart when you're risking $500. And most traders think they're ready to scale because their account balance is ready. But account balance and psychological readiness are completely different things. You can have a $100,000 account and only be psychologically ready to trade like you have 10,000. And if you scale before you're ready, you'll give back everything you made, plus the ego tax. So how do you know when you're ready to scale? Simple. When trading at your current size is boring. When you can take a loss and it doesn't bother you. When you can have a winning trade and you don't feel the need to celebrate or tell anyone. When you're emotionally neutral, that's when you're ready. Not when your account balance says so. Not when your ego demands it. When your nervous system is calm at that size, that's the signal. Now here's the third principle, and it's a paradox. The faster you want to grow, the slower you'll grow. Because desperation creates impatience. Impatience creates overtrading. Overtrading creates losses. Losses create desperation. It's a loop. It's a trap. And once you're in it, it's hard to get out. The traders who grow accounts fastest are the ones who aren't in a hurry. They're not desperate. They're not trying to prove anything. They take the trade when it's there and do nothing when it's not. They're okay with boring weeks because they understand that compound growth happens over months and years, not days and weeks. This is counterintuitive because our entire culture worships speed. Fast cars, fast food, fast success. We've been conditioned to believe that faster is better. But account growth is a slow-cooked meal. You can't microwave it. And the moment you try to speed it up, the moment you add more trades, take riskier setups, scale too fast, you break the system. You break the very thing that was working. Patience isn't passive. That's what people get wrong. They think patience means sitting around doing nothing, being okay with mediocrity. No. Patience is the active choice to trust the process when your ego is screaming at you to do something, anything, to feel like you're making progress. Patience is choosing long-term growth over short-term validation. Patience is the hardest work you'll ever do because it requires you to resist every impulse your brain throws at you. And that brings me to the fourth principle, the invisible phase of growth. Remember the story about the penny that doubles every day for 30 days? Days 1 through 15, it looks like nothing's happening. You start with a penny. Day 5, you have 16 cents. Day 10, you have $5. Day 15, you have $163. If someone told you this was going to turn into $5 million by day 30, you wouldn't believe them. You'd think they were lying. Because the growth doesn't look exponential yet. It looks linear. It looks slow. It looks like it's not working. That's the invisible phase. Every exponential curve has one. And here's what's brutal about the invisible phase. It tests everything. Your belief in your strategy, your patience, your commitment, your identity as a trader. Because during the invisible phase, you're doing everything right and the results don't reflect it yet. You're executing flawlessly and your account is growing at a rate that feels insulting. Your friend who's gambling with no plan, who's taking crazy risks, he's up 50% in a month. You're up 6%. And it feels like you're doing something wrong. The invisible phase is where most traders quit. They think the strategy doesn't work. They think they're missing something. They think they need something more, something different, something faster, but the invisible phase is where the magic is happening. It's where consistency is being built. It's where you're proving to yourself and to the market that you can be trusted with more. It's where the roots are forming underground. Skip the invisible phase, and you skip the foundation. And without foundation, the whole thing collapses the moment any real pressure arrives. So you have to learn to love the invisible phase. You have to learn to find beauty in the boring, in the slow, in the consistent execution that doesn't produce fireworks. Because that boring consistency is the only thing that gets you to the other side, where the exponential curve bends upward and suddenly everyone thinks you're an overnight success. But you know better. You spent a year, 2 years, underground, building roots, staying small, resisting your ego. And that's why you made it when 95% of traders didn't. Okay, so you understand the principles now. You see why patience matters, why ego kills growth, why the invisible phase exists. But what do you actually do? How do you implement this? Because theory without practice is just philosophy, and you need something you can use starting today. Here's your first practice, and it's simple, but most people won't do it because it requires humility. Pick your position size right now, whatever feels slightly uncomfortable but manageable. Not so small that you don't care, not so big that you're stressed. Somewhere in between. And lock it in for 6 months. Write it down, make a commitment, put it on your wall. Do not increase it, no matter how well you do, no matter if your account doubles, no matter if your friend is making more. 6 months of absolute consistency at that size. Why 6 months? Because you're building trust. You're showing yourself and the market that you can execute without self-sabotage. You're surviving the invisible phase. You're proving that you can stick with something when it's boring, when it's not producing the results you want as fast as you want them. After 6 months of flawless execution, then you can consider scaling. Not before. And flawless doesn't mean you never lose. It means you followed your plan every single time. That's the standard. Now here's the second practice. Every time you close a winning trade, pause. Before you do anything else, before you move on to the next setup or check your account balance or think about what to do next, ask yourself this question. What's my ego wanting me to do with this win? Is it wanting you to immediately take another trade to build momentum? Is it wanting you to scale up because you're on a roll? Is it wanting you to tell someone, post it somewhere, make it mean something about your worth? Notice the urge, name it, and then consciously choose not to follow it. Instead, simply log the trade, acknowledge the win as data, as one execution in a series of thousands you'll do over your career, and return to neutral. This ritual trains you to detach outcome from identity, to see wins as information, not validation. Because the moment wins become validation, losses become invalidation, and you'll start sabotaging to avoid that pain. And here's the third practice, and this one is how you actually grow accounts. Not by how you handle wins, but by how you handle losses. Create a rule right now. If you have 3 losing trades in a row, you stop for 24 hours. Not because you're broken, not because you need to fix something, but because your nervous system is activated and you're no longer trading your edge, you're trading your emotions. You're in fight or flight. You're trying to make back what you lost. You're trying to prove you're not a loser. And none of that has anything to do with trading well. The 24-hour pause isn't punishment, it's protection. It's you choosing long-term growth over short-term ego repair. Most traders blow up accounts during drawdowns because they can't tolerate the discomfort of feeling behind. They can't sit with the feeling of loss. So they keep trading, keep pushing, keep trying to force a win. And that's when the real damage happens. Not from the 3 losses, from the desperate revenge trading that follows. So you stop. You take 24 hours. You let your nervous system settle. You remind yourself that 3 losses in a row is just statistical noise. It means nothing about your edge, nothing about your ability, nothing about your worth as a trader. And then you come back and execute your plan. That simple protocol, that one rule, will save you more money than any strategy or indicator ever will. And that's how you turn small trades into massive account growth. Not through force, not through risk, not through finding some magical strategy that prints money. Through patience, through psychological maturity, through choosing consistency over glory, through surviving the invisible phase while everyone else quits, through paying attention to your ego and not letting it sabotage your edge. through protecting your system instead of chasing outcomes. Let me bring this home for you. You came into this video thinking account growth was about tactics, about position sizing formulas, compounding percentages, scaling strategies, and while those things matter, they're not what determines whether you make it or not. What determines it is whether you can stay small long enough for exponential math to work. Whether you can tolerate the invisible phase when nothing looks like it's happening, whether you can resist your ego's demand for immediate validation, whether you can become the kind of person who falls in love with consistency instead of excitement. Because here's the truth, and I need you to really hear this. Small trades don't become massive account growth because of the trades themselves. They become massive account growth because you stay in the game long enough. You don't blow up, you don't quit, you don't abandon your edge right before it pays off. You trust the process during the dark. You execute during the boring. You stay patient when everyone around you is gambling and getting lucky. And slowly, invisibly, the compound curve starts to bend upward. And then one day you look at your account and you realize something. You're not the same trader you were a year ago. You're not even the same person. You've developed patience you didn't have, emotional control you didn't have, trust in yourself and your process that you didn't have. You became someone who can receive massive account growth. You became someone who doesn't sabotage it the moment it arrives. So here's what I want you to remember. Say this to yourself, write it down, let it sink deep into your bones. My account growth is not a reflection of my worth. It's a reflection of my consistency. I don't need to force it, chase it, or prove I deserve it. I simply need to show up, execute my edge, and trust that time in compounding will do what I cannot. Turn the small into the massive. I am not racing anyone. I am not on anyone's timeline. I am building something sustainable, and that is enough. That's your mantra. That's your anchor when the ego screams and the impatience burns and the comparison kills you. You're not trying to get rich quick. You're trying to stay in the game long enough for rich to find you. You're not trying to force growth. You're trying to remove the interference that prevents growth. You're not trying to be someone you're not. You're trying to become who you need to be to hold what you say you want. If this perspective shift landed, if something inside you relaxed or clicked or opened up, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one small trade you've been dismissing as not enough? What would change if you learned to love it instead? This conversation matters. Your story matters. And when you share it, you help someone else see that they're not alone in the struggle. You give someone else permission to stop forcing and start trusting. And if you want more of this, if you want real trading psychology, real account growth wisdom, no hype, no BS, no get-rich-quick schemes, hit that subscribe button. Not for me, for you. Because these reminders matter. These perspective shifts matter. And this journey is long enough that you'll need to hear this message again in 6 months when you're in the invisible phase, wondering if it's working. I'll be here to remind you. I'll be here to tell you it is. I'll be here to tell you that the boring consistency you're executing right now is the most important work you'll ever do. You're not trying to turn small trades into massive account growth. You're trying to turn your small, impatient, ego-driven self into someone who can receive massive account growth when it arrives. That's the real transformation. That's the real work. And it's the most important work you'll ever do, not just for your account, for your life. Because the skills you develop to grow an account, the patience, the discipline, the emotional regulation, the ability to delay gratification, those skills transfer to everything. Your relationships, your health, your happiness, everything. So take this seriously. Not because trading is serious, but because becoming who you need to become is serious. It's sacred work. It's the work of growing up, of maturing, of learning to trust yourself and your process even when nothing looks like it's working. And if you can do that, if you can stay small and patient and consistent while everyone else is chasing and forcing and blowing up, you won't just grow your account, you'll grow yourself. And that's worth more than any amount of money. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having the courage to consider that maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't your strategy. Maybe it's your relationship with growth itself. Stay patient, stay consistent, fall in love with the small trade, and I'll see you in the next one.